Hello and welcome to Accelerating Your Authority. This is the show for experts and consultants growing their expert-based business through six figures and beyond. And I interview experts and leaders about their business so they can share stories, advice, and insights for growth. And today my guest is Rene Morozowich. And Rene helps maxed out service-based entrepreneurs to create their first digital product so they can diversify income, expand client base, and reclaim time and sanity. I love it. So, Rene, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Well, I'm interested in a few different things that you talked about there. So I'm going to dig into that. I first want to ask you who your ideal client is and what the biggest challenge that they face.
For sure. Yeah. So I would say my ideal client is someone who is a service provider, like you mentioned. They are someone who has a pretty full client base. They've been working for some time, a few years, however long. They don't really have a huge team. They don't really want to grow a team. They don't really want to be a manager of a lot of people. They like to do the work that they do, but they are full. That there's no more of them right now to do anything different. And maybe that's fine right now because their lifestyle and their arrangements and everything they have, is fine. But in the future, it may not be fine. They may want some more time. They may need more time. They may want to work with different clients or do different things. So I help people create a digital product to kind of shift the focus from the one-on-one client work to something else, something that doesn't involve all of them all the time.
Right. So like they're at capacity.
Yes, they're at capacity.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And so what when they're thinking about digital products, what are they thinking about and like what issues are they facing when they're thinking about that?
So I think that there are a few things that they might be thinking, and I'd love to get some feedback from your audience if there's something else. But I think that they are thinking they're not sure where to start. So what exactly do I do? I think a lot of people think digital products and they think courses. So I think that's maybe one thing that they're thinking.
Oh yeah.
But also just really just not being sure of what to do. But in addition, even if they know what to do, carving out the time, because like I said, they are maxed out. So they don't just have an extra 6 months, to create their first digital product. We have to do it in a very strategic way, to get an MVP out the door and do some quick testing, and see what works for them and for their audience.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit then, because you talked about, the people think of it as just courses. Like, can you kind of give me a whistle stop tour of what are the other options rather than just building a course?
Yes, definitely. So I encourage people actually not to go the course route, and if you look up digital products, like I mentioned, everybody's like, it's this course for this and a course for that, course on how to build your course. But it's too much. It's too big. It's too soon. You don't even know if you like digital products. So think smaller and think something like a template, like maybe one video, a worksheet, a small workshop, maybe 45 minutes or an hour of something that you've already created for your clients, a template or a guide, some kind of audio. Like really, it could be anything that's not a full-on course. I think people are afraid of courses. I don't know if you've ever purchased a course that you haven't finished, but I do feel like
like everybody, I think.
Exactly. So I feel like if you're creating something, you want people to consume it and you have to make it easy for them to consume. And I think courses are difficult for people to consume. Now, totally a place for courses. I've purchased a couple courses this year and finished, I'd say 3/4 of them. But again, it's your time to create it and it's their time to consume it. So what can you brainstorm? What can you think of that's not going to take you a ton of time? Because if it flops, you don't want to have invested so much time. So, things like that, templates, printables, all the things that we just talked about.
And so are those real, how would I put it? It sounds like those are very quick to create, but mightn't be very high value. So like it could be, a couple of bucks for these kind of products. Are there any high ticket items that you can create that aren't a course?
I think that part of the strategy that I'm kind of putting out there is that it's yes, low ticket, but it's not low value. So, if you're solving an important problem for someone, and again, being really clear and really easy for those people to consume it, um, you know, yes, it may still be low ticket, but you could build on that and you can get feedback from, people who are purchasing. What do they need next? And maybe you do offer some of yourself, so maybe you sell the workbook for X and an hour of your time and the workbook for Y. So I know you love Alan Weiss, and I took his $1 Million Consulting course. And if you look at his sales page, it's like the course is X, the course plus a little bit of him is Y, the course plus a little bit more of him is Z. So, you can add yourself back in, but really just get that feedback from your audience to see what they need next and what they're willing to pay for. It's a ladder, I think, and I think you have to start at the bottom. You can't just jump to
and just for the
fifth
record,
rung.
I don't love Alan Weiss. I think he's a very interesting character.
You talk about him sometimes.
I have a lot of respect for him. Is a better way to phrase that.
Perfect.
He's quite a spiky character. So
yes, for sure. Yeah. But his sales page is good, and I think
his sales page is, and actually, I've bought that same course from him, and it's very, very good. So it sounds like that what you're talking about here is a great way to test, and it's a great way to create like an MVP, a minimum viable product, which is like particularly when you're testing on a market. So I really like that, and the idea of templates and things like that. So in terms of actually creating the products, and I'm going to bit off script here, but I'm really interested in digging into this. In terms of actually creating the products, like creating the templates and things, do you have any advice for people around that part?
I think it really depends on where they're starting and what kind of skills they already have. So, for example, I just did a couple Notion templates over the weekend because, this is my hobby, but, I don't advise you to just go learn Notion so that you can make a template for your audience. I think you should work with what you already know and really like how your audience is going to consume that content. So is it video? Is it audio? Is it a set of scripts, maybe a set of email templates, or, really whatever it is. I think you should work with what you have and not spend, really it's because you don't have the time. It's not about spending a lot of time. It's kind of starting where you are and figuring out how to get to the next step.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about like courses being too big, too soon, too much. And I love that, the way you phrase that. What other mistakes do people make apart from going too big, too fast? What other mistakes do people typically make when they're thinking about digital products?
I think no validation is one big mistake that people make. They're like, oh, I could make an X on Y, and they think it's a good idea, but they don't have any validation, like I said, from anybody else that people would want that or want to pay for that. So I think that it's important to, and I do have a kind of a little tool that maybe we'll talk about in a minute to kind of figure out what your audience is interested in and what their pain points are. So don't just pick something with some purpose or some thought behind it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So can you direct us to anything that can actually help with that?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. So I have a page up here just for your listeners. It's, and I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes, but Scenic Route Digital /AYA, Accelerating Your Authority. And it's just a quick worksheet, 1-page worksheet on how to look at what you're already doing and figure out some ideas from there. So like we talked about, don't just pick something out of thin air, but like look at some very strategic things. I have 3 strategic areas to look at and try to determine if you have anything that you can work with already. So that is something that's available.
Yeah, and I love it. And I love how meta this is getting. So this quick worksheet is something that you've created, which is, again,
yes, this one's free, but maybe the next step is that if there's interest in this, like I validate the idea, and maybe then I have a workshop and maybe that's paid. So, cool. This is a very meta sort of situation, but I don't want to, I'm not going to create a course for you now because I don't know exactly who you are and I don't know exactly what you need. So at this point, like we're just talking about some things that are really interesting to me. And I think a lot of people are experiencing these, similar pain points. So, what is it that people need?
Yeah. Cool. Well, I want to talk to you about your own business for a minute. And I'm wondering what's been important for you as you've grown the business. What's worked for you? What's been important to you as you do it? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that what's been important is I like to do a lot of goal setting, and it doesn't always work out. The first couple of times you do it, it just kind of all goes up in flames. And like you have grand plans, right? It's like everything, like I'm going to build a course. Like I have grand plans of all the things I'm going to do. But really that doesn't actually fit into my life. So, I've learned over time, to scale it way back and try, I still struggle with this, really try to do the important things, not just the things. I can make to-do list all day long, but are those things really important? And I think you've shared with me before the matrix of urgent, important, urgent, not important, that kind of thing. So figuring out what's actually important and prioritizing that, that's just something you have to continually try, to do in your own business.
Yeah. And what I find when I'm talking to people is that typically they will be putting on the back burner the stuff that is important, not urgent.
For sure.
It always gets left to one side as we focus on the stuff that's urgent right now, even if the stuff that's urgent is not important. And that's where it gets and so you have to make you have to make time for the stuff that is important but not urgent. It's like going to the gym. It's never going to be urgent. But if you always put it off, you're going to end up in a bad place. So
right, exactly.
You've got to make time for it. Yeah.
And I do feel this way about digital products because if you're a service provider who's maxed out on time, you have a lot of clients, and really what's the impetus for you to do this? Like you have to be thinking ahead. It's kind of like saving for retirement, right? Like you have to think ahead and think like, okay, if I don't save any money now, if I don't invest anything in my business or creating my business, if I'm just farming myself out, where am I going to be in 5 years? And, and thinking about where I want to be and trying to take the steps to get to that place. So that's kind of really why I'm all jazzed about the goal setting and tactics and the accountability and all that stuff. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any business book or resource that's been important for you or that you'd recommend?
I love them all. I love them. This is my hobby, or business books. So I'm reading one right now. It's called The Success Principles, and I think it was one of the first business books I read. So, I graduated from college in 2001, and I started working at a fairly large company, and it was not good for me, and I quit, much to my parents' chagrin, and I took an online course, right, in 2005 called the Oxford Program of Career Change. And I went through all of these like workbooks and tests and stuff. But I think at that time is when I found that book, and that really kind of opened the door to the possibility of having a career and a life that really fits you. And that really wasn't a thing at the time. I think people now kind of take it for granted. They're like, oh, I can be a business owner, I can be a freelancer or whatever. But it just, I don't think it was the same at that time, or at least for me in the area that I was in. So that was a great one. But others that I like, I have to give you more than one. I like so many. Essentialism, I really like. What's another one? I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue. Let's come back to it because I forget.
No worries. Okay. So what is the number one tip that you would give to somebody who wants to accelerate their authority?
I think you have to put yourself out there. I think you have to, and not just put like some version of you out there, but actually put you out there. What is it that you uniquely have to offer? Like you can't kind of just hide it. And I mean, you can. So, but your question is, how can you accelerate the authority? Like I can be a small business owner, freelancer, and I can work with 10, 20 clients and go about my life, no problem, and maybe that's fine. But if I want to, accelerate this, like I have to come out, at least some of me out there in the world, talking about the things that are important to me, talking about, what I can uniquely offer, how I can help people, and, getting that feedback from people to see what they need, and giving it back.
Yeah, and a lot of people that I talk to talk about that as being authentic. I think Jill Motes
Yes.
described it as radical
Mm-hmm.
authenticity, and she's kind of taking
Yes.
it to the next level there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's something I talk to people on the recognized authority a lot about. So okay, so where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yes. So the link that I mentioned before, it's scenicroutedigital.com. And some people have a hard time with the word scenic, but just look in the show notes, but /AYA. And that'll be a little bit here about what we talked about today. I'll have a special little video for your listeners, and that worksheet that I mentioned. And then some more on that site about me and some other writings I've done.
Yeah, and I highly recommend following Rene, because I like the stuff that you put out. It's really interesting and thoughtful, and you're a person who reads a lot, and clearly that shows. And we would pronounce that here in Ireland, we'd pronounce it Scenic, so Scenic Route Digital.
Oh, okay. Well, there we
Scenic
go.
Route Digital.
Well, route
So
and route, yes,
yeah,
people are using that interchangeably here. Yes.
Yeah, so Scenic Route Digital, or Scenic Route.
But is the same
So
concept, right? Like you're
right.
not taking the highway to get there.
Oh no,
You're
we're
taking
the we're taking the
okay. Yes.
We're taking the nice less traveled road. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's less traveled. It's leisurely, but there's still a purpose. There's still a destination, and you're enjoying more along the way. And that's kind of the philosophy that I kind of live by myself, but also like in this business that I want to give to people. Like, I don't want you to put your life on pause for 6 months and create that course. I want you to, take small steps and work it in, and do some testing and figure out, what works for you.
And speaking as somebody who did just that, only it was about 18 months, on a product that we hadn't validated properly, back about 10-15 years ago. That was a mistake. So and that's what I like about your kind of the way that you approach validation and MVPs and kind of baby steps. I think it's a great approach. So
baby steps. People don't like, it's not flashy, it's not exciting. It's the saving for retirement thing, right? Not exciting. No, I'm not going to be on like CNN talking about how I take baby steps to meet my goals. But like, that's the thing. That's how you get there. Like, that's how you do it.
Yeah. So. I love it. Well, Rene, thank you so much for being on the show, and I look forward to chatting to you next time.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me.